In this video, I will share my thoughts on the death of the position that has produced some of the greatest footballers of all time, the traditional number 10. Also, I will talk about how the position has adapted to modern football and some players that I think would have been traditional number 10s if the position was still around. Before we get into the video, please join my Discord below if you want a place to talk about football daily. Link will be down below. The traditional number 10 was the position for the player who would play directly behind the striker. This player was known as a second striker or an attacking midfielder. These players were always the creative outlet for the team. They would be the players that would need the ball at their feet at all times because they drove the attack. They connected the midfield to the forwards. They were skillful, intelligent, and often viewed as lazy. These players would not be doing the dirty work. They were not defensive workhorses, and they would often have no defensive duties. They would try to find pockets of space and wait for the defense and midfield to do their job and give the ball over to the 10 so that an attack can be launched. These were often the best and most creative players on the team. The players a team could rely on to get the ball in any scenario and create something out of nothing. With their intelligent passes, vision, creativity, instinctive decisions, close control, elite ball carrying, and overall brilliance. As I mentioned before, this position allowed the world to see the magic of some of the greatest footballers of all time. Players like Johan Cruyff, Diego Maradona, Ricardo Kaká, Dennis Bergkamp, Roberto Baggio, Zinedine Zidane, Wayne Rooney, and many others. So why has this position mostly disappeared? Well, it's mainly because of the tactical evolution of the game. Most teams play with a midfield three that consists of one holding midfielder and two advanced midfielders. So every team plays with a 6 and 2 8s. These two 8s both tend to be box-to-box midfielders, and there isn't one that operates as a traditional 10. Every player now has to run. There is so much emphasis placed on how teams defend and press as a unit, and teams can't afford to have one or two of their players strolling around the field without putting in any defensive work. There is a greater importance on playing as a team, rather than focusing all of the game around one of the players. For example, Manchester City's best creator is Kevin De Bruyne, but he is not a traditional 10. Manchester City can create chances through many different players in many areas of the field, and does not rely on one player to the majority of the creative work. Most teams operate in a similar way. Obviously, not all teams play as well as Man City, but most teams don't have a designated creator. There are distinct styles of play that help generate chances, and it's not about one player finding space and initiating the attack. Over the last 10 years, there has been a massive shift in the way that this position has been used. It has stopped being a designated position and has become more of a role. Players like Philippe Coutinho, James Rodriguez, and Mesut Ozil were the last of a dying breed. These players can't really play anywhere else besides the 10 position. Ozil is the last incredible traditional number 10 that I can think of. Ozil was one of the best creators in the world, and at Arsenal, that was his main purpose. His job was to find space and create chances. He had incredible vision and passing ability, and is one of the most technically gifted footballers I've ever watched. Also, Ozil wouldn't be found working incredibly hard defensively because he didn't have to. He was pretty much a traditional 10. However, as I mentioned before, this position has now turned into a role. One way the traditional 10 has been replaced is through the false 9 role. This is a combination of a striker and a traditional 10. This player would be the lone striker, but would drop deep and pick up the ball, and was a more creative type of striker, basically a playmaker. For example, two players who have been seen in this role are Roberto Firmino and Antoine Griezmann. These players were played as number 9s, but would often drop deeper and create chances for the other forwards. Another player who has been seen in this role is Lionel Messi, but Messi is also an example of the other way that the traditional 10 has been replaced. The second way it has been replaced is through giving a winger a free role. That's the best way I can describe it since it doesn't really have an actual name. These players would take up a position on the wing, but would often just roam around the field wherever they were needed. Because they were the playmaker for the team. These players were wingers, but would rarely be seen on the wing and would try to find space centrally to create. This is different from a traditional 10 because this is a winger taking up the role of a 10, but there is not a designated position behind the striker for this player. The formation of the team remains the same, usually a 4-3-3, but this player just has more creative freedom compared to the others. These are players like Messi, Neymar, and Hazard. Hazard at Chelsea is a brilliant example of this evolution. He was a winger, but would often be found carrying the ball and creating through the middle of the pitch, and he was always the creative outlet. Because the actual position is mostly dead, I'm going to list some players that I think would have been traditional number 10s if the position was still still around today. I'm going to break it down into two categories. One category will be players who would be able to create by using their technical brilliance, passing, vision, and link-up play. These are players who I can see playing similarly to a number 10 like Dennis Bergkamp. The other category is ball-carrying playmakers. These are players who would be able to create by using their explosive dribbling and who would glide past players with ease and then slip a ball in behind, similar to a traditional 10 like Ricardo Kaká. Let's start with the first category. The first player I could see being a traditional number 10 is Phil Foden. Foden is a player I think can only show how good of a footballer he is if he is given the main creator role. I think he would be a perfect 10. He has the control, he has the intelligence, and he has the vision. His profile is that of an attacking midfielder. Similar to many of the players I will name later, he has often been used as a winger, which does not show how good of a player he is. The next player is Florian Wirtz. Similar to Foden, he has the traits of being a traditional 10. He is a perfect player for picking up the ball and creating chances for his forwards. Very intelligent tactical footballer who has the ability to produce magic on the field at all times. The next player is Jadon Sancho. This might sound like a crazy shout, but when I watch Sancho play, I don't see a winger. I see a midfielder. I don't think he is useful on the wing. He needs to be linking up play and given fewer duties defensively. I think he is a very intelligent technical player, and I think the world will never see the best of Sancho because he is always being pushed out to the wing. He does not seem like a natural winger, and he does not play like a natural winger. He is not direct enough or pacey enough, but he does have that ability to control play and tempo. And I believe he would be perfect for the traditional 10 position if it was still around. Some other players that I would like to add in here are James Maddison and Dani Olmo. Now, let's move on to the next category, the ball-carrying playmakers. The first player I could see being a traditional number 10 is Jack Grealish. Grealish is not a winger, and if you believe Grealish is a winger, then we must view the sport differently. Because the traditional 10 has disappeared, players like Grealish have been pushed out to the wing. At Aston Villa, he played both in midfield and on the wing. When he played on the wing, he was given a similar role to that of Hazard's at Chelsea. He was able to roam free and pick up the ball anywhere on the field. His ball carrying was incredible. He would launch attacks on transition by skipping past players with ease, and this allowed him to be one of the best players and creators in the world a few seasons ago. I think his ball carrying and creativity are too elite to be wasted on the wing. At Man City, his best qualities are not on display, and he has been turned into a touchline possession-based winger, but if the traditional 10 was still around, he would definitely find himself there. Another player who would fit in this category would be João Felix. I'm a massive fan of Felix, and I think he has been misunderstood as a player. He is an elite ball carrier and a player who thrives off running with the ball. I genuinely loved watching him at Chelsea last season because he brought something different. He was trying to play in a very free way, and even though it didn't entirely work out, he was still fun to watch. But I don't think he is a player to stick on the wing or up top. He would be perfect right behind the strikers and just being allowed to create. Another player who would fit in this category is Jamal Musiala. He is one of the most exciting young players on the planet, and what's great about him is that he's been able to operate through the middle consistently at Bayern. And he hasn't just been forced out onto the wing. A few of the players I mentioned like Foden, Wirtz, Dani Olmo, and James Maddison also get to consistently play through the middle, but I think Musiala is able to play the closest to a traditional 10 just because of the way Bayern's set up. Musiala is an incredible dribbler and he opens up so much space by running past players. He has a long way to go, but creatively, he is excellent. Musiala is also a player I don't really view as a box-to-box midfielder or a winger, so hopefully he gets to play this central advanced role for most of his career, just so he can play to his best. A few other players who I think would also fit the mold of a traditional 10 are Emil Smith-Rowe, Dejan Kulusevski, and Nicolo Zaniolo. So that will be the end of the video. Please tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Please share with me any players that you believe would have been excellent as traditional number 10s. Thank you so much for the recent support. Again, please join my Discord down below if you are interested. Please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.